And, you brought up the Eagles. So today, news broke that Nick Sirianni is coming back for the Eagles again. So he's going to be their head coach. Obviously, as a Cowboys fan and as unbiased as you are about all things Eagles, do you feel like he should have been given another shot? And if he does, well, he obviously clearly is. He's going to get another year. But do you think he deserves this shot?
Yeah, I do because he took this team to the Super Bowl last year and he almost won it. That's really hard to do for any head coach. I think they really messed up the coordinator process, and I think the locker room, some of the players in there are kind of messing things up. But they brought in Vic Fangio to be their defensive coordinator. That news just broke today, or they're in talks with him, and it seems like a pretty safe bet that that's where he's going to go, Philadelphia. There might be talks between the Eagles and Cliff Kingsbury to come in and be their new offensive coordinator. Once they get some really talented coordinators in there and maybe they reshuffle the lineup a little bit or they help calm down AJ Brown, have him not stir up the locker room as much as it's being reported he was, and Jalen Hurts gets healthy. I think you give him a full deck of cards to play with this coming season and you see what happens. If Nick Sirianni doesn't take a reloaded Eagles team far in the playoffs, so they come out and look like they did last year, that's when I think you move on. But because he took them to the Super Bowl, I don't think you can get rid of him after one bad year.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, I would agree. I think, initially seeing the Eagles collapse, I just kind of felt that, someone's going to have to, take the axe, and as much as sometimes it's not all on the head coaches, a lot of the times them and coordinators are the ones that are the first ones to go, especially after, you start season 10-1 and it all falls apart and you look like a team that should have never made the playoffs in a wild card round against the Buccaneers. And so, I was definitely surprised at them bringing him back, but it makes complete sense because, of what you just said, Rob, bringing them basically super close to winning a Super Bowl. And so, I think it's the right decision to give him another shot at it. And if some of those similar problems arise, then maybe that coaching change will be made. But they're bringing in, they fired both their offensive and defensive coordinators, so, or I should say, let go part term, part ways with those type of colorful language of saying we let you go, you're done. But and so bringing in some extra talent like that could help balance out the roster. Um, because they certainly have some great players on there. Do you think that Jalen Hurts is the guy moving forward, or do you think the Eagles may potentially select kind of a later round quarterback in this draft to potentially kind of back up Jalen Hurts moving forward?
I think it's kind of dependent on what the Eagles do in the draft because I think that the Eagles, you remember in 2017, Carson Wentz had not looked great, and then they drafted Jalen Hurts in the second round, and then Carson
Hmm.
Wentz was just absolutely terrible after that. I feel like
Yeah,
when they drafted a quarterback in the second round, they absolutely destroyed Wentz's confidence. And that's a huge part of why he faltered. Not just the injury. I mean, obviously that played a role, but having your team go out there and get another quarterback with a high draft pick must have destroyed like what you were thinking on the inside. And I think Jalen Hurts
absolutely.
is a very young quarterback. He's only had 1 year where he's been really good. So I don't think his confidence is anywhere like near where, a guy like Aaron Rodgers would be. If you go out as the Eagles and you get a guy like JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix and you have him sitting on the bench behind Jalen Hurts, I do not think Hurts would be able to handle that pressure. I think he would collapse. If you build around him and you give him a good roster, I think he can be a system manager. I think he can get you to a Super Bowl and he can win you a Super Bowl if you're playing his style of football, which is you have him run the football, you have him take deep shots to AJ Brown and Devonta Smith every once in a while. The question, I guess, is that style of football sustainable? Because this year it didn't really seem like it was. Hurts was hurt all the time and he wasn't able to run as much. Um, if I were the Eagles, I would make the decision, before the draft, are we going to commit to Hurts or not? And if you decide not to, I would trade him for more draft capital before the draft and then try and get like, one of those better quarterbacks like a Jaden Daniels or a Bo Nix. But if you decide he is the guy and that you want to go forward with this guy who needs to run the ball in order to be successful, you really need to not pick a quarterback and just build around Hurts because you will destroy his confidence and have another Carson Wentz on your hands if you do that.
Yeah, and that's never good. Like imagine you being at your job and they bring someone in, it's like, "Oh yeah, he's a new guy and yeah, he's just going to sit behind you." So I mean, if you falter, then he'll replace you. I mean, that's certainly has got to shock anyone's confidence in their ability, especially when, coming off of a season where you went 10-1 and then you just dropped off, for on whether it's your kind of skill level that ended up leading to that and others, definitely probably would not be the right move moving forward. Do you think that there is this belief that you look around the league in terms of these Alabama quarterbacks, whether it's Jalen Hurts or Tua Tagovailoa or Mac Jones, and recently with Bryce Young, do you think that with how high Alabama stock is in the college football world under Nick Saban, do you think that these quarterbacks were drafted higher than their actual potential was just based on school and how their upbringing was? And now when they've reached the NFL, it started to, those questions start to arise a little bit more. Do you think it was that Alabama kind of tag that really got these quarterbacks in the viewpoint of, these upper teams and put a lot of faith into them?
Yes and no. Yes, I think that these guys all looked much better, especially guys like Mac Jones and Tua. They looked a lot better at Alabama than they would have if they were at another program. And I think if you picked any random college quarterback and put them on a team as loaded as Alabama has been these past few years, they would look a lot better than they did at whatever other team they were at. But then you also have guys like Jalen Hurts who transferred to Oklahoma and looked better at Oklahoma than he did at Alabama. Again, that's
Hmm.
another program where they had like really good wide receiver talent. CeeDee Lamb was there at that point. Lincoln Riley, they had a lot of good offensive pieces in place. I think it just kind of talks about when you're scouting a prospect, you have to make sure you separate them from their team, especially at quarterback. I think that's just so important because if you're just, standing behind an impenetrable offensive line and throwing the balls to wide open receivers who are just absolutely smoking whoever's covering them, um, I don't know how well you can evaluate a player like that. I think that's definitely what happened with Mac Jones at Alabama. I think if a team is really looking for a quarterback that they know is going to be good in the NFL, they have to find a quarterback not only who has traits that are transferable to the NFL, like leadership and arm strength, and he can read the field well. You want to find a quarterback who went through a lot of adversity in college. Because, like, I mean, you look at guys like Tom Brady or Dak Prescott. These are guys who went to teams that were absolutely not stacked at the times they were there, and they managed to take them and give them really good winning seasons. If you find a guy who can do that, now that's a guy that I would trust to lead my team to a Super Bowl. And these Alabama quarterbacks just never had the opportunity to do that. So when you draft someone from a really like stacked program like that just goes out and destroys the competition, I think you do run the risk of having someone who looks better in college than they will be in the NFL.
Thank you for joining us on the Red Zone Rodeo podcast.
If you like football and you like having fun, come on down and subscribe. Check out our channel for more videos like this one.
No ifs, ands, or bucks. This is the best place for your football news.